Too late, Blade.
The Marvel Universe is packed with vampires. We've got Morbius, the not-so-living vampire who can't decide if he's a hero or a menace. There's Baron Blood, who makes being a Nazi somehow more evil. And of course, Dracula, because what's a vampire roster without the OG himself? But there's one vampire who's just built differently. Someone who wasn't born a vampire, but became one through his own twisted science experiments. He's as ambitious as he is ruthless. The man responsible for the creation of Marvel's badass vampire hunter, the Daywalker himself, and ironically, the architect of his own downfall. Today, we're diving deep into one of Marvel's most notorious vampires. We'll break down his history and origins, and discuss his role in both comics and film. Let's talk about Deacon Frost, the man, the legend, and the vampire who dared to challenge the very order of his kind. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The origins of Deacon Frost, from scientist to vampire. Serving as a primary villain, Deacon Frost was first introduced in the Blade film, portrayed by Stephen Dorff, in 1998. Like many great antagonists, Frost's origin has shifted over the years. Sometimes he's a twisted scientist, other times a rebellious vampire with a god complex. But at his core, he's always been a man obsessed with power, immortality, and bending the vampire world to his will. So let's sink our teeth into the dark origins of Deacon Frost, tracing his journey from the early days in the comics to his unforgettable portrayal on screen. Before he became a blood-sucking menace, Frost was just your average scientist. Well, not so average, considering his fascination with immortality. In all honesty, fascination would be putting it lightly, given how his obsession often drove him to perform unethical experiments on his victims. One such experiment involved a young woman named Ilsa, whom he planned to inject with the blood of a recently killed vampire, just to see what would happen. But as fate would have it, the experiment was interrupted when Ilsa's boyfriend stormed in to save her. During the scuffle, Frost was accidentally injected with the vampire blood himself, and that twist of fate turned him into a vampire. But this wasn't just poetic justice, it was the start of something far darker. You see, Frost didn't become just any vampire. Due to his accidental transformation, he developed a unique ability. Anyone he turned into a vampire would generate a doppelganger under his control. In other words, his not-so-cute hickeys could spawn an army of loyal vampires. But that's not the end of his villainous legacy. Deacon Frost is also the reason Blade exists. Frost was the vampire who attacked Blade's mother, the pregnant Tara Brooks, while she was in labor, in a UK brothel no less. And as if being a soulless monster wasn't enough, Frost posed as her doctor just to get close to her. When she was at her weakest, he sank his teeth into her, draining her of blood. In the comics, Tara doesn't survive the attack. But here's the wild part. The baby did. During the attack, a strange enzyme from Frostbite entered the baby's bloodstream. Instead of him turning into a full vampire, it left him something else entirely. A Dhampir, a half-human, half-vampire, with a built-in immunity to vampire bites. He also inherited some pretty handy perks like enhanced strength, heightened reflexes, and a serious grudge. Naturally, losing his mother that way left Blade with a lifelong vendetta. And like any good superhero origin story, he channeled that rage into something bigger. After leaving the child orphaned, Frost did what any heartless, bloodthirsty vampire would do. He moved on. Eventually, he made his way to the US, fully leaning into his villain era. He quickly rose to power and became an influential figure in New York City's vampire underworld. However, not everyone in the vampire community admired his methods. The ruling purebloods saw him as a reckless outsider. Too wild, too unpredictable. Unlike them, Frost had no interest in playing nice with humans or sticking to old treaties. He believed vampires should rule outright, not hide in the shadows or negotiate with weaker beings. That belief led him to his most ambitious plan yet, resurrecting La Magra, the ancient blood god, to wipe out humanity and place vampires at the top of the food chain. To Frost, humans were nothing more than walking blood bags. Mere flesh and bones, just fuel for his reign. He didn't care who he had to kill, as long as he got what he wanted. His vision for the world? Power, control, and an endless supply of fresh blood. But of course, Blade wasn't about to let that happen. In a brutal final showdown, the Daywalker took Frost down, ending his reign before it could truly begin. Now, one might think that that would be the end of him, but with vampires, it's never that simple. Even after his supposed death, Frost's influence never truly faded. His legacy still lingers, because in the world of the undead, no one stays buried forever. Deacon's biggest moments in the Marvel Comics. Ever since his first appearance in the comics, Deacon Frost quickly established himself as one of the most sinister and ambitious vampires in Marvel's universe. Over the years, he played a key role in several major storylines, each one only solidifying his reputation as a ruthless villain. Deacon was first introduced in Tomb of Dracula No. 13, 1972, brought to life by Gene Colan and Rob Wilson. And trust me, from the moment he stepped onto the page, you knew he was bad news. In the comics, he's described as tall, with slick-back white hair and glowing red eyes that pierce through the darkness. Frost had that whole vampire overlord vibe down to a science. Although Frost's most defining act was his role in Blade's origin, making him a pivotal figure in Marvel's supernatural lore, he was also the reason Hannibal King had a bone to pick with him. Before King ever became a supernatural detective, he was just your everyday private investigator, until Frost turned him into a vampire against his will. That betrayal made King dedicate his existence to hunting down the silver-haired menace, making him and Blade unlikely allies in their shared quest for revenge. Even with Blade gunning for him, Deacon Frost wasn't the type to go down easy. He thrived in the shadows of the Tomb of Dracula series, always a step ahead of everyone. Meanwhile, Dracula, the guy the whole series is named after, was dealing with his own headaches. From demon cults to a random confrontation with the Silver Surfer. And while everyone was distracted, Frost saw his chance. If there's one thing about this guy, it's that his ambition knows no bounds. It fuels his every move and makes him one of the most dangerous and downright badass vampires in the Marvel Universe. His thirst for power even drove him to try and dethrone Dracula himself, aiming to become the ultimate Lord of the Vampires. Unlike Dracula, who sought dominance through brute strength, Frost operated quietly. In Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, number 59 through 62, he built a vast network of vampire followers, using them to wage a secret war against supernatural forces, including Doctor Strange. Though ultimately defeated, his actions had long-term consequences for the mystical balance of the Marvel Universe. Frost wanted to reshape vampirism itself. In Blade, Vampire Hunter number 3 through 5, he began experimenting with vampire clones, attempting to build an army of doppelgangers. His goal was to spread a new kind of vampirism, one immune to the traditional weaknesses that plagued most vampires. But of course, Blade wasn't about to let that happen. In Night Stalker number 1 through 5, Frost was shown as more than just a brutal vampire. He was a master manipulator, always 2 steps ahead. While Blade and his allies fought to take him down, Frost was orchestrating chaos from the shadows. And even after being defeated, he never truly stayed dead. In Blade number 10 through 12, he made a grand return, proving that true monsters don't just disappear. Frost's influence extended beyond just Blade's story arcs. In Crescent City Blues, he set his sights on New Orleans, using its rich supernatural history to further his dark agenda. This version of Frost leaned heavily into his role as a schemer, pulling strings from the shadows. While the ruling elite of the vampire nation saw him as a maverick, Frost always viewed himself as a visionary, aggressive, unapologetic, and ready to dismantle the existing vampire hierarchy. However, his arrogance often proved to be his downfall. Frost continually underestimated Blade's relentless pursuit, and despite his intricate plans, he was once again stopped before he could cement control over New Orleans. In the more recent Bloodline, Daughter of Blade 2023, Frost proved that his influence extended beyond just Blade. It reached his family. This time he set his sights on Brielle Brooks, Blade's daughter, marking a chilling evolution in their rivalry. While his past conflicts with Blade were fueled by power struggles and personal vendettas, this time, Frost had a deeper, more twisted goal. By kidnapping Brielle's mother, Saffron Calder, he attempted to use the Brooks bloodline to create a hybrid that would bridge the gap between humans and vampires. It's clear the scientist in him was still alive. His presence in this story cements his status as more than just a recurring adversary. Even with new heroes arising, he's a force that refuses to be erased, adapting with every return to become even more dangerous.
Congratulations, Blade.
Frost.
I hear you've been looking for
Deacon Frost, from panels to the silver screen. While his comic book counterpart was originally portrayed as an aging rogue scientist, Blade 1998 gave Deacon Frost a serious upgrade. Played by Stephen Dorff, this version wasn't some reclusive lab dweller, but a stylish, dangerously charismatic young vampire with ambition that threatened to shake the very foundations of vampire society. Unlike the pureblood vampires who preferred operating in the shadows of their secret elite, Frost had much bigger plans. He spent his time translating ancient vampire scripture in pursuit of a dark prophecy, the secret to summoning La Magra, the blood god, and wiping out humanity so that vampires could reign supreme. Dorff's cool, collected portrayal made Frost one of the most memorable villains of the late 90s. He embodied the ultimate tech-savvy modern vampire, a sharp contrast to the traditional aristocratic bloodsuckers. Whether it was his cocky attitude, icy calm, or effortless confidence, Frost stood out as a unique and formidable force. Frost's power wasn't just in his vampiric abilities. What made him truly dangerous was his strategic mindset and ruthlessness. He knew he wasn't invincible, and that knowledge made him all the more calculated. He had no loyalty to anyone but himself, evident in how he manipulated and discarded human minions, and even fellow vampires like pawns on a chessboard. One of the most iconic moments showcasing Frost's power came when he captured Blade and drained his blood, aiming to weaken the Daywalker before performing the Magra ritual. After absorbing the blood god's power, Frost became faster, stronger, and seemingly unstoppable. His body could even regenerate after being sliced in half. At that point, he was no longer merely a vampire, he had become something more monstrous. Godlike. But like many arrogant villains, Frost underestimated his opponent. Despite achieving near-divine strength, he fell to Blade in one of the most epic final battles of the 90s, using a special serum of anticoagulant called EDTA, which caused vampires to explode violently from within. Blade injected multiple vials into Frost's body. At first, Frost laughed it off, smug and untouchable, but then his body began to swell grotesquely, turning into a pulsating mass before erupting in a spectacular bloody explosion. Though Frost was ultimately defeated, his legacy endured. His portrayal in Blade reinvented the character, transforming him from a relatively minor comic book villain into a fan-favorite antagonist who helped redefine the vampire hunting genre for the new generation. His cocky, rebellious swagger and ruthless ambition made him unforgettable. Even today, Stephen Dorff's performance is still widely praised, and many fans believe Frost deserves a return in some form, whether in a future Blade reboot or another Marvel adaptation. No matter what the future holds, one thing is certain: Deacon Frost will always be remembered as the villain who delivered one of the most iconic showdowns in superhero cinema history. Appearance. In the comics, Deacon Frost is depicted as an older man with white hair, red eyes, and a cold, calculating demeanor. His attire is sharp and formal, reflecting a refined yet sinister nature. The Blade 1998 film, however, reimagined him as a sleek, modern figure, a young man who's as effortlessly charming as he is deadly. Frost in the movie isn't lurking in the shadows like the traditional Dracula archetype. He's walking into boardrooms with blood rituals and a smirk. Stylish suits, high-tech labs, and a high-rise office? This is Vampirism 2.0. Where Dracula revels in the old ways, Frost represents the next evolution, a shift from survival to domination. And that's exactly what makes him such a terrifying adversary. Personality. Deacon Frost is ambitious, ruthless, and dangerously intelligent. Unlike Dracula, who sees himself as a god among vampires, Frost is a pragmatist who wants both power and dominance over the community. Although his charisma makes him a compelling leader, his arrogance often leads to his downfall. He thrives on chaos and deception, always staying one step ahead of his enemies. Powers and weaknesses. Like all vampires, Frost possesses enhanced strength, speed, and durability. However, his mutated version of vampirism grants him additional abilities that include rapid healing, mind control, and the capacity to create his doppelgangers. But with extra powers, he also faces usual vampire vulnerabilities, which means sunlight, silver, and wooden stakes are a big no-no. In the movie, he overcomes some of these weaknesses by seeking the power of La Magra, though ultimately he's defeated by Blade. The biggest contrast between the comic book Frost and the movie Frost lies in their backgrounds, personalities, and motivations. As discussed earlier, in the comics, Deacon was an older scientist who became a vampire after an experiment gone wrong. His schemes were more calculated and long-term, often revolving around cloning and deception. In contrast, Blade 1998 reimagines Frost as a young, charismatic rebel who isn't just climbing the ranks. He wants to burn the entire system down. Instead of playing political games with the vampire elite, he openly challenges their rule, pushing for a new world order where vampires dominate humans completely. His tech-savvy, modern aesthetic of slick suits, high-rise offices, and advanced blood rituals give him a cyberpunk, high-tech feel, making him stand out from the more traditional gothic vampires seen in fiction. While both versions are power-hungry and ruthless, the film's Frost feels more like a young revolutionary, whereas the comic Frost is more of a mad scientist with a sinister agenda. Marvelous verdict. Deacon Frost is without a doubt one of Marvel's most compelling vampire villains. His role in Blade's origin story makes him a cornerstone of the character's lore, and his manipulative nature ensures he's always a threat, looming over the world. Whether as the cunning scientist of the comics, or the sleek, ambitious rebel of the Blade movie, Frost remains a standout antagonist. His adaptability across different interpretations only adds to his legacy, because a villain who can change with the times is one that's the hardest to kill. Let's be real. Deacon Frost may have been taken down, but villains like him never truly stay dead. Whether it's a new iteration in the MCU or a return in the comics, the idea of a power-hungry vampire with a grudge against Blade side? That's too good to stay buried. With Marvel's growing supernatural side, who's to say we won't see a fresh take on Frost in the future? But what do you think? Should Deacon Frost return to the big screen? Or would you rather see him confined to the comics? Let us know in the comments. That's it for today's deep dive into Marvel's dark side. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. As always, stay safe and keep your silver stakes close. You never know when you'll need them. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.